let me start with this whole debate, because a lot of people equate online gaming or fantasy sports with betting or gambling. And it seems like even the regulators think of it like a casino like business. But I guess from your perspective, you would argue that, a game of skill is very different from a game of betting and the two should not be lumped together, right?
That's right. I believe it's very clear with the law that games are either defined as games of skill or games of chance. And games of skill are those where it is predominantly a game of skill. And I don't think that it is my opinion or anyone else's opinion, but the court's opinion that matters. And fantasy sports has been taken to court in three different high courts. And subsequently, each one of them have been challenged in the Supreme Court to a point where the Supreme Court has three times, twice dismissed the appeal, and at the third time given an actual judgment saying that fantasy sports is a game of skill. It is not betting, gambling, or wagering, and that the matter is now res integra. And so I think that is the only opinion that counts. And that's been there for a couple of years now. I do believe there's other perceptions around. And I believe the similar people who have that perception will also call the stock market gambling, for example. But both can have money, but both have an elaborate amount of skill attached to making the right decisions. Except that here it is fantasy sports at its fundamental. The nature of fantasy sports is to provide engagement for the sport that fans love. It is like popcorn to a movie. You won't serve popcorn just sitting or eating at home, but when you go to a movie, popcorn becomes a necessity. You need to enjoy the movie with that popcorn. Fantasy sports serves as an engagement tool to the sport that you love, so that when you watch your next IPL match, if you made a team, you're going to watch it a lot more.
So, what is the dividing line, Harsh, on this? Because you have sporting games and you have non-sporting games. I mean, to play the devil's advocate, some people would say, poker involves some skill as well, but poker is considered gambling. So, what is the line which divides betting and non-betting, fantasy sports versus true online gaming or betting?
I think that's up to the courts to decide and the regulators. If India passes regulations from the government side, or until then, the courts can decide if a game can be proven to have predominance of skill over chance, then by our law, it is a game of skill and not gambling, betting, or wagering. So I don't think I am qualified to answer that question. I think the Supreme Court is qualified and they have answered it for fantasy sports. And I'm sure there'll be other games that will either get to Supreme Court, will be challenged and will be answered, or I actually personally prefer that we've been advocating it for a while, that the government looks at gaming and sets up a regulatory body. And I believe that it's the farsightedness of this government that they are able to create a regulatory body now. And our honorable PM and honorable FM have already announced within the last budget and after the budget that India is a gaming powerhouse and we can be much, much larger. And for the first time, the government is looking at recognizing gaming in an official capacity and regulating it properly. So we welcome that move. We've been advocating it with our own industry body. The industry is created called the Federation of Indian Fantasy Sports, FIFS. And we welcome any common sense regulations in our sector.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.